Welcome, I'm Ike, and this is Draw Process, where I draw pages of my comic and process about that. And this is page 68 of episode 2 of First Sun and Sword. You can read all my comics on my website, Ike Comics. Also on Clever Kaiju, I post my webcomics there to that community website that I'm a part of. So, these are the thumbnails. For the last 20, 30 pages of this comic, I think more like 30, I was drawing all the thumbnails back to back. A lot of times I will draw one thumbnail each week and immediately pencil that, finish the pencils. It's just a nice cycle to just do one each week. But I wanted to make sure the story ended well and that the pacing was good. And so I'm working out some of that. I'm double checking my writing even by drawing it, bringing it to life. So I decided to do the thumbnails for all of the final pages at once and then go back and finish the pencils. There were benefits to that because I was able to do this over a handful of days. I was able to focus on it. And doing that much drawing of this kind, where you're really envisioning the characters and you're building, there's a lot of structure. There's a lot of drawing the backgrounds, framing, setting up the shots. By practicing that so much with none of the extra fluff of having to refine the pencils or ink it or color it, I'm able to do more of that in a short amount of time. And I noticed that my skill at that was sharpening. It was getting better by the end of those 30 pages that I did in a week or something. That feels great, but then you lose that sharpness because you start focusing on other things. So there's a waxing and waning here of the sharpness of your skills. And I also have found that going back to these roughs and trying to finish them feels a little worse than doing them in the moment. That when it has been a few months since I did these roughs, I'm trying to pencil on top of my old pencils, and it's just a little disconnected. It's hard to remember what I felt and meant. And so that's a challenge. Now, some of that can be overcome. These are the kinds of things I have to think through, right? I think about my practice and how I'm doing it. I'm paying attention to what's happening with me and with my art. Because you go where you are pointed. What you're pointing at is where you're heading, what you focus on. So I... thanks to this video series as well, where I get to think and talk about it, I try to pay attention to what's happening with me and pay attention to where I want to go. And so where am I pointed? And that will result in progress, in development, in the direction I so choose. Again, how am I adapting to those circumstances of how I've structured my practice? I'm trying to remember when I sit down to pencil that even though I'm drawing on top of old thumbnails, old rough drawings, I need to picture this as a fresh scene. The characters are actually there. I'm picturing them as characters doing something, and I'm trying to communicate, I'm trying to convey what the characters are doing, which is very different than trying to accurately draw a figure. I'm not focused on drawing skill or quality. I'm trying to focus on these characters as actually like living characters, like as if there's a camera here. And but because the thumbnails are already done, it's harder to remember to do that, because I could just look at the roughs and put more pencil on top. That's different than seeing the scene for myself. So just a little mental focus or a change of focus, I am finding is helping me not lose the organic, natural, spontaneous quality of penciling whenever there's that gap in time between when I did the rough drawing and finished it. But I also am thinking that with that gap in time that I had, my pencils are taking longer to complete. And so I'm thinking that maybe I could just complete the roughs immediately. I don't have to ink yet. That I'm going to try. Because obviously, if I complete the penciling and the inking and all of that, then I'm right back where I started, to doing one page at a time. But the time it takes to come in and refine these pencils would not be that much more per page. Maybe I can do that. And then all I have to do is ink it. So that would be cool. And with the next issue, I don't think I'm going to do any color. So that's going to speed it up. I'm very excited by the idea of quickly conveying what the characters are doing, quickly completing these books. And part of that is I know that when I sat down to do these roughs and did nothing else but that, I got really sharpened. It got easier. I got even better at it. It felt very good. At first, it was a little bit challenging, and then it started to feel really good. So I want to be able to stay sharp like that. I don't know. These are the thoughts I have. These are the things I think about. This panel border being the gutter between these two panels is quite at an angle. And you'll see that I did that because I didn't want to crop off Sword's head here at all. But if I made that a straight vertical panel gutter, then you would see some of Farah's face, some of the side of her head in the panel on the left. And so I started to draw her head, and I realized I think that's distracting. I want to make sure the focus is just her hand on him. That's the focal point. That's the focus. I need to bring it over more, and I don't want her head right there next to his. So I just angled the line. That's something I used to not allow myself to do. I was much more rigid with the size and shape of panels. And I get that that's a cheat in a way. Like when the reason that I angle a panel border is because I want to crop off drawing information, that is not the best reason for doing that, right? Especially when you're new at drawing comics, you don't want the choices you're making to be dictated by something so arbitrary. It should be intentional, what shapes you're using for what reason. But I give myself more leeway these days. I still consider the panel shape, like in the organization of the page, how that looks. But this is more of a very living document, living process through completing the page, and I can move things around and improve them, and even if it's just so that I don't have to erase and redraw a panel, that's okay too. Speed is important here, and it gives it a certain quality. There's a spontaneousness to it. Okay, I struggled with Sun's face here. I need to get a little more practice on faces, but again, it's about sharpening skills. There's times when I know that my faces are solid. I've just been practicing drawing them more or something, and then I feel much more solid about them, or times that my environments feel much easier to draw. Again, everything's kind of in flux all the time. I can't just be sharp in every area all the time. But one thing that happens is with time, even your least sharp area at that moment is good enough, or just requires a little extra time. I mean, that's the idea, is a highly skilled, musician or whatever, you're good enough that people can be impressed even when you're not at your best. And that's just from all the discipline, all the practice put in, all the experience. So, this idea I mentioned of you are going where you are pointing. That's true in life as a whole. I try to pay attention to my practice, but also all of life. What am I paying attention to? What kind of thoughts am I thinking? What do I think about? And how do I think about it? What kind of media do I consume? Comics I consume. In what way do I consume them? All of this is about setting myself up towards a productive direction. So, and that direction is intuitive. It's how I feel. What feels like the direction I should go in life or with my art. And it's intuitive. But it's based on a lot of data. You're reflecting on everything you're doing and adjusting course and double checking. So if I focus on the right things more, then I'm going to progress in my art skill more quickly. I'm going to get more sharp more quickly. This is important. When I sit down to do these talks for these draw process videos, I don't really prepare. I'm speaking extemporaneously, and that has to come from whatever is within me, whatever I've been focusing on, whatever I've been thinking about. Is there enough there, enough richness there, that I can sit down and speak honestly, and that be of any use to someone? There have been times in my life when my head is buried in my classes, video games, whatever, and maybe everyone knows that feeling of like, it's time to talk to someone about yourself, about life, whatever, especially when it's not just small talk, and you're deer in the headlights. You don't really know what to say because you haven't been paying attention. And this is about being human. This is about love and survival and thriving, because part of this paying attention, that's what made me think of this. Paying attention is what our caregivers, our parents, had to do to help us develop as a person, to thrive. And that is love, that's care. And many of us have experienced some amount of neglect of ourself being found and witnessed, space being made for ourself in childhood to develop. And so we were neglected, we were abandoned in some way. I don't mean like ultimately, but in smaller ways maybe. And then we grow up, or we learn to neglect ourselves. We learn to get in some kind of flow state, doing art, doing video games, doing our work, whatever it is. We feel like, now no one's bothering me. Now I'm at peace. Now I'm good. I'm just doing my thing. I'm flowing. But we also, during that time, can forget that we're hungry or thirsty or, not doing so well. It might take us a while in that state before we realize, oh, I'm lonely. Oh, I'm hungry and thirsty, whatever it is. Because we're so used to that state of neglect that we recreate it for ourselves. We stay in a state of neglect. And eventually it might hit us that it's we are abandoned. And we did it to ourselves. This is one thing that I think occurs for people. It was just one thing, and not everyone experiences that. But it relates to this paying attention to yourself, that you don't abandon or neglect yourself. Because for many artists, I think it's common for artists to have their own, quite a bit of what I just said, quite an experience of being in flow state and having their own inner world that they retreat to. Art can be therapeutic and escape. That's great. But at the same time, if you're only in a flow state when you do it, I mean, it's not too different than just getting drunk. You're not necessarily developing. You're not necessarily paying attention, and you're not really there. You're not really present. You aren't doing the art. It's just happening in a flow state. It's not necessarily you engaging with it. And how might you know this? Well, if you are doing art, and for one, I mean, this is one possibility, I think. If you are doing your art and you feel empty afterwards, you burn out from it. Why do I even keep doing this? If you're feeling that way a lot, you're not very present. You're not very engaged. Because if you were engaged, you would find unlimited wealth, unlimited riches that would come from yourself being present and engaging with such a rich process. We lose that for other reasons too, because we can lose being in that state because it becomes a job. If we're doing art for a job, or for pushing ourselves for certain goals we have to meet, then we might lose, sort of deny ourselves, not get ourselves working in a way where it's not ourself present. We're just trying to plow through. So that's a danger too. It's a danger to your development. And so, when my focus is on my development, this is not a selfish thing, and this is not a narcissistic thing. It's not even a driven thing where I have to be the best. I've got to somehow really achieve. It's none of those things. Because it's more like love. It's like I want to be present. I want to pay attention. I want to live and experience and relate to these things and share it with others. I have been here with the inking lately and the pencils a bit. I'm letting go more with the line work and the leaving lines out. So there's less detail in the water or the waves. I just throw in a few scribbly lines, and it's enough to convey water, especially because there's color involved. And I leave plenty of area where there's no lines. I've been enjoying that. Just letting loose in that way. Same with the hatching lines. I'm letting them be messy. I'm the kind of building them in the way that the shadow down inside the boat is conveyed, and heavier in certain areas like underneath them versus around them, above to the left or right. It's becoming more and more organic or natural for me. The same way that many people can relate, that artists that pencil have a long history penciling drawings, but they have a hard time, it's very common, a hard time refining those pencils into really clean pencils or inks, final inks. Because if it's just pencil, they can easily scribble in some shading, give a loose sense of shadow and form and everything. But then when it's time to ink, they lack the technical skill or know-how to convey all of that with such a finished line, and they're trying hard to make it a nice finished line. What I see myself doing is that my inks are looking more like rough pencils. They're natural or easy in the same way that the pencils are, and that as long as it is effective in communicating, which will include it having a certain amount of internal consistency, like a consistency from panel to panel, obviously. But I can just ink however I want to ink, as long as it's consistent and it communicates. And that will come, it will come authentically when I just ink the way that I naturally would, the way I might naturally pencil, when I'm just trying to communicate. It'll work. And I think that, for newer artists, because we lack that consistency, that voice we've developed of our own of how to convey different materials, lighting, whatever, with ink, for example, we might turn to the greats, the experts, the teachers, methods. Okay, this is how I will ink this material. These are the inking techniques I use and when to use them. And then it'll give the appearance that our work has improved, and people will praise us for this improved work. But this is a danger, too, because you aren't conveying things as you see them. You're not feeling them and seeing them in yourself, and then trying to convey them naturally through yourself. You're applying a skill. And sometimes people see through that. They can see this is a collection of skills. This is not a bad thing to do, though, because if you build this set of skills, you can also incorporate it into your own voice. That's how we learn language. You learn new words, and at first it may be weird if you use them because they're not yours yet until you use them. So you can still obviously learn skills and incorporate them, but the ultimate goal is still that it's yourself doing the conveying things. So that's it for this week. A few thoughts to leave you with. I'll see you next time. There's one of these every week. Bye.